Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Today's guest on Better Than I Found It is Illinois assistant coach Ruben Sondjaja. Originally from Australia, Ruben is one of the great up-and-coming young coaches in college golf. In this episode, he and I discuss his playing experience down under as a junior golfer and an amateur golfer, while also touching on his two coaching mentors, Andrew Tank of Iowa State and Mike Small of Illinois. Ruben is a deep thinker who analyzes situations and figures out solutions. His calm demeanor and tranquil approach make him not only a terrific young coach, but also someone you'd want to have a conversation with. I hope you enjoy the listening. Okay, Better Than I Found It faithful. Join me in welcoming Illinois assistant coach Ruben Sondjaja to the podcast today. Ruben, it's a real pleasure to have you on my podcast. I've been thinking about this one for quite a while. You and I have built a really good relationship for the last few years.
Coach McGraw, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Well, that's great. One thing I wanted to hear was the accent, so make sure you're very Aussie with this accent, okay? I do. It sounds good to the ear. I don't know why. It always has.
Will do, Coach.
Okay, perfect. Well, we've reached that time of year where it's off season. So a lot of people outside of the coaching profession, people that don't know what college golf coaches think or do, think we just kind of go into neutral and don't really do anything. And we get a 3-month vacation and boy, it's just wonderful. I think they're a bit misguided. What do you think?
Coach, I think you know as well as I do that unfortunately that doesn't happen. The college golf job right now has just a ton of responsibilities and roles, and you've probably seen more than anyone over the past 10, 15 years, our roles have expanded and we're doing a whole lot more than we were back in the day.
We are, and that's not to say that that's a hardship. It's just a difference in the way coaching looks. And you know what? We're getting players who are more sophisticated, more talented, more well-versed in just all areas of golf. So we better be better. We better be doing some things, especially in the off season, to get better. And I think it's very understandable. So I'm not upset about it, but I know we've got a big off season planned here at Baylor. We didn't have a very good fall season, so it's kind of incumbent upon us to make some gains over the break, and I know we will. Our guys have great attitude. They're not afraid of work. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make gains in a lot of different areas. We've analyzed what we did this fall, and I think we're going to be way better in the spring. What do you and Mike Small have planned? I mean, you don't have to be specific, but basically, what have you got planned over the break?
Well, we got a lot planned, Coach, and I think we just finished our season at Steelwood Collegiate last week. And I think that was a very positive, productive week for us as a team. And we ended up winning the tournament by 2 shots, but it also revealed a lot of things that we need to work on both individually as players and also as a team. And so I think the next couple of weeks, the guys are going to have a bit of downtime, but we're excited for these end of fall meetings where we get to unpack everything from this fall and figure out a good plan for our players and our team moving forward.
You said end of the fall meetings. Coaches generally have an end of the fall meeting and they have like an end of the year meeting. And I participated in all of those all through the years. But I found that I was checking off a box. Okay, here's 10 guys. Tomorrow we're going to go through 10 30-minute meetings. And when 30 minutes is up, the clock's over. You go on, we'll bring the next guy in. And I just felt as if I was just sort of going through the motions. Don't know if you've ever been there. You haven't been doing it as long as I have. But I changed that years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I'm not going to have a meeting with a player unless there's a real something I really want to accomplish or learn or I want to glean something out of the meeting. So you mentioned end of the fall meetings, those, and you actually mentioned them with some excitement in your voice, like you are looking forward to finding out what your players have learned, I'm sure.
For sure. And like you said, I think it's one thing when the players are forced to do these meetings, but it's another when they want to do it themselves. And so we give our players the time to reflect, to think about their fall, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, to revise their goals, to reflect upon those goals, they come to us, which is I think is a big part of it. So we let them take the lead with these end of fall meetings, and when they're ready, when they've got enough substance that they want to discuss with us, we're all in, and that's when it gets really exciting.
And that part I just learned something. I've never done that. I've always been the one calling the meetings. What you no, that's good. I like that. So what you and Mike Small do is tell the guys, hey, once you've got everything in order and you've reflected over the fall, you've got all this, we will meet with you, but not until you've given it some thought. Is that the purpose behind that?
That's spot on, coach.
Wow. I just learned something. I knew I had you on here for a reason today. I mean, seriously, I'm
Uh,
not even joking. That's not said tongue in cheek. It's like I had never thought about the end of the fall or end of the year meetings as player led. I've always sort of thought the coach is going to lead it. But what you have them doing is sort of their homework before they come to the meeting, and then they call the meeting, and then you all are ready for it.
exactly, spot on.
Well done. Okay, most of us in Division One golf know you as one of the up and coming young coaches. That's what a lot of people think about you. I know it personally because you and I have sort of developed a really good relationship, a relationship that's all about giving, thinking, probing. We talk to each other. We always have something good to say. But you have a unique background, and it's probably different than most people know. If they just met you, they probably don't know you've had an unusual background as far as a college golf coach. You grew up in Australia. Tell me about your start in the game and your competitive background, because I've never really asked you about that, other than I saw you and coached and walked in your group when you were in college. But other than that, I didn't know what happened before.
Sure. Well, my dad was a big part of me playing golf. He was a golf nerd, a golf junkie, self-taught, and he read pretty much every golf book under the sun. And so he was a big part as to why I started golf. And from there, I competed in junior tournaments all across Australia. And we were very fortunate to have a lot of thriving organizations in Australia. We had the Jack Newton Junior Golf Association, which I grew up in. We had Golf New South Wales, which was our state association. And then you had Golf Australia. So there were three tiers, almost a local, regional, a state, and a national. And I was fortunate enough to compete at all three levels. And man, that was we had a lot of fun. There was a lot of strong golf back in the day, and I got to rub shoulders and compete against guys like Cameron Smith and Cameron Davis and these guys on tour right now who are doing really cool things.
Wow, that is amazing. You mentioned those two players, which obviously today's generation of golfers knows them very well and knows their how well they've played. But Australia's had some amazing players through the years, starting back with Peter Thompson back in the 50s and 60s.
Hmm.
He won 5 Open championships. Never really played the PGA Tour. When you look back on it, you think how great would his legacy be all time had he played over here? He would have won a lot of golf tournaments in the United States. He just didn't play over here much. There was David Graham. There was obviously Greg Norman, Adam Scott. I mean, I'm gonna miss a bunch, so I want you to fill in there. Great Australian players that have made an impact on world golf all through the last 50, 60 years. But who were your heroes, other than the ones you were competing against there? They weren't really your heroes, they were your contemporaries. Who were your heroes? Was it Adam Scott, Greg Norman? Who were the players you looked up to?
You know, my biggest Australian golfing hero is Jason Day.
Hmm.
And I remember watching Jason at the Australian Open when I was a young kid. And I just loved the way he went about his business. And back in the day, he had this he would visualize behind the ball, he would have a specific pre-shot routine. And that's what I thought of as Jason. He was in his own little world, playing golf the way that he tried to play as best as he could. And man, I every now and again I'd get compliments from people that would say, "Hey, you remind me of Jason Day." And that would be the biggest compliment I'd ever receive. I didn't quite play like Jason Day, but at least I reminded people of Jason Day.
Well, I got to tell you, he has played an incredible amount of good golf, and I think he's only won one major, but I think he's had another 7 or 8 top tens in majors, maybe more, and has been a consistent winner and consistent, competitive player for a long, long time. And I'll never forget watching. He was obviously a Corn Ferry player, and everybody. He came over here very young, and
Hmm.
I remember watching him win the Byron Nelson, and it was at TPC Las Colinas, and he's got a 1-2 shot lead going into 18, and the poor kid just limped all the way to the clubhouse and made a bogey to win his first tournament. I remember thinking how hard that must have felt for him because it didn't look very hard after that because that opened the floodgates and the kid became a world-class player, no question about it. Do you have any memory of watching him win that first event?
I don't. I don't. I watched him a ton at the Australian Open growing up, and it was hosted at the Lakes Golf Club, which was 5 minutes away from home. And for us, the Australian Open was our marquee event. It was when we had a lot of players come down. Tiger Woods came down, Jordan Spieth came down, and would attract a pretty good international field. And so that was my Super Bowl, watching Jason Day at the Australian Open.
Yeah. One of the things that people talk about Jack Nicklaus's career, won 18 professional majors, six of those were Masters. And I think an under talked about, nobody talks about it, is how well he played in the Australian Open, how often he
Yes.
went back, and how he loved playing in that event. Do any old timers ever talk about Jack Nicklaus coming over down there and winning?
He did. And the reason why I'd heard about it was there was a year where Jordan Spieth came down to the Australian Open at the Australian Golf Club and he had blitzed it. And a lot of people would compare his performance to Jack Nicklaus back in the day in the Australian Opens that he'd won.
Well, I remember the one you're talking about when he shot 63, and I don't think anybody else broke 70 that day.
Yep,
And I consider it one of the top professional rounds ever played because you don't beat an international field by 7 shots in one round without it being something very, very special.
correct. Spot on there.
Yeah. Okay. So I am talking about the correct tournament right there, aren't I?
Yep, yep.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. So my favorite Aussie has been Adam Scott, and I love Jason Day, but Adam Scott, I think of the consistency of his ranking in world golf. It's been quite amazing, actually. He's never completely fallen off the map. He just keeps on showing up, keeps on playing well. Have you ever gotten to play with him or seen him play?
I haven't. He had been involved with Golf Australia and would come back and he would give us some clinics here and there, but I never got the chance to play with Adam. But funny enough, I was fortunate enough to play a few Australian Opens, and because of my last name, Sondjaja, my lockers were always next to some really good golfers. Adam Scott one year was next to Jordan Spieth one year, was next to Cam Smith the other, and so I can't say I've ever played with Adam Scott, but I was locker mates with him.
That's awesome. Sondjaja, it took me a long time to finally figure out how to pronounce your last name. Ruben was so easy, but Sondjaja, not so much. Tell me the background on your last name.
Yes, it comes from the Indonesian origin, and my parents are both from Indonesia, and they migrated to Australia about for college. So in the late, in sorry, the 20s, and they migrated over to Australia, and yeah, they had my family there and my brothers there, and here we are.
Yeah, that your family's still all back in Australia.
Correct. Yep.
What do they think about you being halfway around the world, 20 hours by plane?
Well, it's a long travel day, that's for sure. And every year I try to get back there over Christmas break if I can. And they've been over a handful of times too for my graduation at Iowa State. But they know that I'm doing some cool things over here and they're happy for me.
That's awesome. That's really cool. At what point did you decide? I mean, you developed into a really fine player, and you talked briefly about where you competed at all three levels of junior golf and amateur golf in Australia. But how in the world did Andrew Tank find you? I think that's an incredible get. You became a very, very good player, but it's not that easy to go all the way down to Australia and pull out a kid who's not only a good player, but a good person and all that. How did Andrew find you?
Well, this was one of those small world moments where back in the day, Coach Tank Wood worked for Brad James at the University of Minnesota. And they were lucky enough to win the national championship there. And Brad James, shortly after, took the Golf Australia high performance manager role. And at that time, I was in the junior team for Golf Australia, and I'd expressed interest in going to college golf. And Brad connected me with Andrew. And
Hmm.
so it was a small world. It was a great coincidence. And we had a couple Aussies and New Zealanders in the Iowa State golf team at that time. And so there was a level of comfort that I had of going to Iowa State.
Yeah, that's a long way to go for and if you didn't know anybody. And it sounds like to me, I do remember Andrew. He and I, when he was on my podcast, I don't know, a year ago, we talked about that. 2002 NCAA championship.
Mhm.
Literally a dream season that there's not been a movie made about it, and there's been no book, and there should be because it's truly one of the great stories in the history of college golf. And your former coach and the guy who got you to the United States to play college golf was a big part of that. I think people should go back and listen to my Andrew Tank episode because he tells the entire story of how Minnesota won that national championship, and it should never have happened. And by golly, they did it. Incredible story.
Sure was, coach.
Yeah. Okay. So you get over here, you play at Iowa State. I remember meeting you for the first time. When did you get to college? What was your first year?
2013.
Okay. I remember meeting you in the spring of 2015. We were at Arizona State. We were waiting on the first tee, and I was going to walk, I think, in your group with one of my players at Baylor. And I remember you were just so outgoing, and but I love that Aussie accent. It kind of caught my ear, and it was like, okay, and this kid must be a pretty good player. And I realized that day you were a very good player. But so your college experience, what was it like? Any great memories, things you can look back on and say, wow, I'm glad that happened.
Well, the in Australia, we don't have college sports. And so growing up, I had no idea what college sport was about. And I'm thankful that I came over here because, wow, the college experience is like no other. And at Iowa State, we had a bit of a chip on our shoulder as a northern school, and we had a lot of cool experiences. But the best experience that I had was when we made the national championship in 2013. And that was really cool because it was the first time that Iowa State had made the national championship since I think I want to say 1953. And I remember at the regional site that we were at, Old Hawthorne, Missouri was hosting us, and we shot an 18 under in the last round to secure that final spot for the national championship. And it was that week where you could really feel the team camaraderie, how special it was to be a part of a team, and more importantly, how special it is to achieve things that had never been done before. And that was my highlight of college for sure.
I remember when Andrew was hired and he came into the Big 12 conference and really nice guy. And I'd remembered his story from Minnesota, but I hadn't thought about it was just about 4 years in, maybe or so, about 4 years into his career at Iowa State when they made nationals. You know, you mentioned a chip on your shoulder, being a northern school that hadn't had a lot of success. I've had a lot of guys on this podcast, a lot of different guests, players and or coaches or both who explain why a chip on your shoulder can be a great thing if it's used properly. A bitterness chip on your shoulder, that's a bit, you don't want to play with bitterness in your heart, but a chip on your shoulder means, okay, they don't really think we can do this. Let's show them. Is that sort of the attitude you guys had?
Exactly. It was just playing with purpose, playing with an edge, and playing the underdog card. And I think we really embraced that. And quite frankly, we still embrace that now in my role at Illinois too. And we always play with an edge, we always play with purpose, play with conviction, and play like we've got something to prove.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk to you about Mike Small and your experience here at Illinois in just a moment. But I actually was part of the moment Illinois golf became. Now they'd had great players before. Obviously, they'd had Mike, they'd had Steve Stricker, yeah, they had some really good players before. It's not like it was void of good golf, but I remember you could see it in Mike's eyes. It was 2008. I was at Oklahoma State at the time. We were leading going into the final round at Olympia Fields, paired with Illinois and Indiana. And we didn't play well the last round, and Illinois played great. And they won the tournament. And it was I could see in Mike's eyes, okay, we have arrived. This program that I've been building has now beaten the best teams in the country, and we've done it. And I think it's literally been on the upswing ever since. I don't think Mike's people will say it was a downtime, maybe the year they didn't make match play or something, but what he's done up there as a northern school has been off the charts, one of the best jobs in the history of college golf.
I agree with you there, coach. And I think I listened to a podcast not too long ago. I think it might have been yours, where you mentioned that back in the day, it was dubbed as the best Northern school golf program. And now it's just perhaps nationally one of the best programs out there. And he's done a phenomenal job.
He really has, and but I think I was there for the moment, and my team took it took the run end of that because we didn't play well, and they ended up beating us that day, and I think it turned the program around forever. and his players believe they could do it. But let's get back to your story, your journey. What got you into coaching to begin with? Because you were a player. I don't think you grew up. You told me earlier you didn't grow up watching sports too much other than golf. So it wasn't like you were thinking, well, I'll become a golfer and then I'm going to become a coach. What turned you to coaching to begin with? Was it Andrew reaching out to you again?
Yes, it was a bit of both. I mean, I think growing up, I had a lot of great coaches through the Golf Australia program, and I just observed lots of coaches in the pursuit of mastery and developing golfers from the junior level to elite amateur levels to successful professionals. And I was just very fortunate to learn from these coaches, and I've always thought, that would be a very fulfilling profession to be a part of. And then I played golf at Iowa State. I got to experience the what college golf is like. And that's when it kind of solidified, man, this would be something that I could see myself doing. And I played on tour for about 3 years, and during the end, my mindset wasn't where it needed to be, and I wish I would have known a lot of the things I'm learning now back then about the importance of mindset and how to compete and how to bounce back. But at that time, Coach Tank had reached out and asked if I'd be interested in taking up a GA role at Iowa State. And I'd been told a few times from various people that they thought I'd be a good golf coach, and so I thought I'd give it a crack. And since then, coach, I mean, it's something that invigorates me, it's something that excites me, and I'm all in. I love what I get to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I'm much, quite a few years your senior, but I still have that great passion to want to get up and learn and do and help young players. But you know, you mentioned Andrew reaching back out to you. That's an amazing compliment to you as a person, not as a golfer, none of that, but that he reached out to you saying, "I think you would be a great coach. I think I want you to come back and rejoin the program and help us build." You had to take a little bit from that vein, didn't you? That he was showing you a great amount of respect by reaching out.
For sure. And I thought, well, I played for coach for 4 years, and if he wants me back, I guess I didn't do everything wrong.
No, you didn't do everything wrong. I'm sure of that. Give me one thing you remember that Andrew Tank presented to you that you think you're never going to surrender. You've taken it with you as a coach to Illinois. One good thing, one little nugget of wisdom you think that you can remember.
When I think of Coach Tank, I think of his character and his integrity. And there were a lot of moments that I think it was actually we had a conversation about per diem, and he told me that his dad would tell him, "Hey, like little things, it's not worth it to cut corners and to cheat corners, and you just have to do things right." And this is another example. And I think that word of phrase had stuck with me where I look back now and my time as a player for him, a GA, a coach, and now a friend. He is a man of integrity and of character. And that's what I hold with me the most is that we do things the right way. And I think Coach Tank had told me that, and he was a role model for that too.
Definitely. I've considered him a coach of high character and proud to be one of his colleagues, and certainly here in the Big 12 Conference. Andrew Tank's doing it the right way. If you lose a recruit to Andrew Tank, don't worry about it. He got it. He got that recruit the right way, the honest way, and I just think I trust him with just about anything. He's a great guy. So if he taught you that, maybe you already had that in you. He just brought it out of you. How about that?
We'll run with that.
Okay, we'll run with that. All right. So, you were a very good player, but there's been tons of good players through the years. Not all of them make great coaches or even good coaches. A lot of times they get in the trap of, well, this is the way I did it, so this is the way my player is going to do it, or maybe they just don't know how to communicate very well or whatever. But good players don't necessarily make good coaches. You are both. And I know that because I've watched closely. So what do you think are your best coaching qualities that validate my assessment of you?
Well, I appreciate those kind words, Coach. And maybe I think it stems from my love for coaching. And I think it starts there. And like I mentioned to you a brief moment ago, I love what I get to do. Coaching to me is not a job, it's a lifestyle, it's what I get to do on a daily basis. And when I think of if I'm tired, I just think of coaching it and I get all of a sudden a burst of energy. I get energized, I get excited. It's very fulfilling. So I think it starts there, coach. I'm excited. I love what I get to do. And then from there, it allows me to maybe be a little bit more effective with my coaching. I think I'm pretty observant. I love connecting with our players. I love connecting the dots and just I'm curious about what brings out the best in these guys. And over time, I think you combine my love for what I get to do with this curiosity, and I hope that makes some good traits for coaching.
I think they're amazing traits for coaching. And honestly, years ago, a reporter wrote an article about college coaches and called us bus drivers. I don't know if you remember the article, but um, I really wish he would spend time on campuses. I really wish he would talk to and interview former players of these schools that have had
Mhm.
such great success because coaching is way more than just knowing what the swing plane is or knowing what a certain shot selection should be for a player. It's way above that. And what you just described is true. There's no question about it. And I think that's why we have more quality coaches like yourself doing this nowadays. So hopefully we're well past the bus driver stage, which I believe we are. Uh, in one word, describe your coaching style. I've never asked that question on this podcast. You're the first one in 225 weeks. One word. You only get one. Describe yourself, your coaching style.
Man, I was thinking about this one word to describe this coach, and I don't know if I can do it. I have two words with a hyphen in the middle. You can put a hyphen in there.
Okay, hyphen, that's the same word. Go. Hyphen.
But I think the one word or the one phrase would be all in. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is that whether it's we're grilling out and having fun, we're all in, we're all immersed. If we're practicing, boys, we are all in, we're engaged, we're focused on what we're doing, we're emptying the tank. If it's at workouts, we're all in, we're focused, working hard. And I think that's probably the best way I can describe my coaching is that whatever we're doing, boys, we better be doing it all in.
I totally, I know that about you. In fact, I'm going to ask you. So I'm always constantly trying to learn from people I'm around. And I remember I had remembered you from your college days, and I was recruiting at probably my second tournament after COVID, so it would have been the Western Junior in 2021. And you walked up and you said hello and you introduced yourself, and I'd remembered who you were. And we ended up having dinner that night and talked coaching for a couple hours. You remember that?
I sure do.
You taught me something that evening, and
And
I
what
want
was
you to
that?
explain it to my listeners. Hogs, HOGS. Tell these people
Hog.
what hogs mean.
HOGS is an acronym for Habits of Greatness.
Habits
And
of greatness.
it was coined by a New Zealand sports psychologist named David Galbraith. And he had wrote a book called Unleashing Greatness, which I think is a phenomenal book. But he talked about HOGS. And that was just something that resonated with me where in life, I mean, if we're not careful, whatever we're doing soon becomes a habit. And Coach Small talks about this to our guys all the time, the way that you walk to your car is the same. The seat that you choose in your lecture hall tends to be the same. And we are creatures of habit. And so why not make them hogs? Why not make them habits of greatness that will help us achieve the goals that we set for ourselves?
Okay, I already knew that because you told it to me that night and I wrote it down in my journal. I loved it. And I put it right next to another quote from one of the greatest players who's ever lived, and it was Ben Hogan. And Ben Hogan said, "Whatever your habits are, make them good ones." And he
Yes.
was basically saying, "You're going to have habits, whatever they are, they better be good ones, or you're going to fail in competition." And habits of greatness is something every one of my players need to hear. In fact, they're going to hear it in this meeting this week that we're going to have as a team. It's like, guys, remember, we got 3 months before our next tournament and your habits are going to reveal something about you over the next few months. So I love that. You taught me something the very first night we had dinner together. That was great. Keep teaching.
Will do. And I think those hogs are going to be very important and crucial, especially during this off season. As you know, champions are made in the off season. So what we do behind the scenes and in the dark is gonna be a big deal.
Absolutely. So, you mentioned earlier you didn't watch sports growing up. You did watch golf, but you had coaches that influenced your life. And can you tell me if you want to say the name, that's fine, but something about the best coaches you ever had? I think whether you're coaching golf or whether you're coaching life or whether you're coaching at a business, if you're managing 25 employees, you're a coach. So what was the best coach you had growing up in Australia? And how did he coach you?
Of course, well, my coach growing up was Marty Joyce, and he was based out of Melbourne, Victoria. And so Melbourne was a 2 hour flight south of Sydney. And I'd spend the weekend with him once every 2 months and we'd get some really good work in. But I think what was cool about the coaching situation down there was that we developed a team. And it was Marty who oversaw my golf instruction and coaching. We had a psychologist, we had a physiotherapist, we had a S&C coach. And so it was more the integration and the cohesion of the team that I really admired. And so guys like Marty Joyce and Luke Mackey was a phenomenal S&C coach, and he still works for Golf Australia right now too, is watching them operate as a team to bring out the best in their players, to develop them. And honestly, it's really shaped the way I think about college coaching too. Because, whenever you go on a team website, you might see the coach's bio and there's a head coach, assistant coach, maybe a director of operations. But there is a big support staff, and I think we all know that. There's a big team in college athletics that need to operate with cohesion towards the same goals and with the same intensity to really help our boys do as best as they can on the golf course and in the classroom. So it was the cohesion, the integration of the team that I think was really inspiring.
Great. You try to replicate that or try to use that in your coaching today, even.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So, we mentioned him earlier, and I'm going to ask you now. I had Mike Small on my podcast. I have respected him from afar for 20 years now. And we've got a lot of great coaches, guys who have done great work where before they got there wasn't necessarily great. Like Bruce Hepler resurrected the Georgia Tech program and turned it into a winner. Ryan Hibble at University of Oklahoma. You've got Scott Limbaugh at Vanderbilt. You've got um, Jay Sewell at Alabama took a program that wasn't doing much and built it into a winner. So obviously, coaching does matter. It matters. There's no question about it. And I know that sometimes there's a honeymoon effect when a guy comes in and takes over a job and he's new and everybody loves him and it's great for a little while and then things go away. Why is Mike Small able to, if you could just come up with a couple of characteristics, why is he able to sustain this success? A northern school, literally in a northern climate, has some of the best facilities in college golf, has the best results basically in college golf almost every year. How does he do that? What are his best qualities? It was hard for him to talk about himself. He didn't want to talk about himself when I was asking those questions. So what do you see on a daily basis?
Well, coach, that's a great question, and I get asked that question a lot. And probably like your experience with Coach Holder, maybe there are a few things that are kept in the vault that are for secret,
Yes.
but really there isn't a secret. In the same point in time, there is no secret. And for Coach Small, the one thing that strikes me about him is that his actions and his behaviors appropriately align with his goals. And what I mean by that is that I think at the start of each year, for example, I think of the team meetings that every college team has at the start of each year, where they do a nice goal setting meeting. They talk about the goals that they have for themselves individually and as a team. And maybe they throw out goals on the whiteboard, like win the national championship, or perhaps it's making the match play, or it's winning their conference championship. And so I think we can conclude that it's not the goals that separate teams and individuals. It's really the behaviors that appropriately match those goals. Because at the end of the season, there's only one national championship winner. There's only 8 teams that make the match play. And there's only one conference championship winner. So with Coach Small, I've just seen over the past year and a half, his actions, his behaviors, the way he goes about his business appropriately matches his goals. He just has a very high goals, he has a very high standard and expectations, but he lives them every single day.
So it's not like I didn't understand that, but it's the first time I've ever heard it put that way, that your actions and your behaviors appropriately align with your goals. And I think every coach should tell that to his team. You say you have these goals, but is what you're doing on a daily basis matching up with that? You know, I think that's honestly simple, but it's also very brilliant. Thank you for sharing.
Of course, and coach has been able to do that for the good portion of 25 years. And so I think that's why he's sustained this success over time. This consistent success is that his actions and his daily behaviors every single day in, day out, match his goals. And he
Excellent.
just happens to have some very lofty goals.
Yes, he does. I think it's great. He's inspired a lot of us other coaches as well. You know, what's interesting about it is I worked for Mike Holder, who his personality was a lot different than mine. I think looking at Mike Small does not have a personality that matches you. They're not the same, in other words. I think you guys have very different personalities. Uh, and Mike Holder and I did. And I think Mike and I complemented each other beautifully. I think I was a great, great hire for him. And I'm not saying that about me. He needed somebody to soften his hard edges. Mike had a lot of hard edges. And uh, Mike Small doesn't have that many hard edges, but he is a very direct, very straightforward, very speak his mind kind of guy. And I love that about him, that because I know where I stand with Mike. How do you and Mike complement each other, your personalities?
Well, that's a great question, coach. And I think that's something that I've learned over this past year. And when I first started coaching for Coach Small, I fell into the trap of maybe trying to copy him, trying to emulate him, and try to be like him. But at the end of the day, there can only be one Mike Small, and that's for sure. There are things that only Mike Small can pull off, and and I've learned that lesson. And now I'm trying to become the best Ruben Sondjaja out there. And for me, what that looks like with this team right now is to be more like that encouraging, loving brother to to the guys. And I've got my arms around their shoulders, and I encourage them, I lift them up, but also I'm unwavering to the standards and expectations that Coach Small has set for them. And I think that's how I can complement Coach Small right now is just playing that role of being the older brother to our boys. At least I try to anyway.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think your role as Mike's assistant is similar in ways to my role as Mike Holder's assistant. And Coach Holder knew what he needed me to do for him, and I was able to compliment it. It sounds like you can do the same, well, with Mike Small. That's great. Um, so Ruben, you seem like a deep thinker to me. I feel like you're very analytical. And you told me something before the podcast that I'm going to ask about now, and that is you've actually built an app to maximize training and analyze stats for your team. I think that's pretty incredible. Are you a computer guy? How did you do this?
Well, it just started off as a water project at Iowa State, coach. And I just thought that we had to be getting more out of our practice. We had to be more efficient with our practice, but we also wanted to learn from our practice. We wanted to figure out the tendencies that would occur in practice so that they could teach us something in tournament. And so when you're coming down the last hole, coming down the stretch, and maybe you've got a penalty area to the left, and you need to know where you're centering your dispersion off the tee. Or when you've got a back left pin that's tight, that's cut tight to a deep bunker, you need to know where to hedge your bets and to hedge your iron shots to where you can pull that shot off. And that really sparked that curiosity for how can we maximize our training and how can we most importantly learn from our training so that we can apply those tendencies onto the golf course. And so it started off as some training games, simple training games to where as guys would start practicing, they'll just input a few pieces of data. And the idea was over time, we could really learn from their practice. And there was something about it where we would compete and you would compete in tournaments. You would reflect on your tournaments and analyze your stats. But there wasn't a full circle to me. And it just made sense where we would learn from our tournament play and our performances under competition. We'd get back onto campus, train hard, train well, train effectively, learn from that, and then overlay that into the next tournament. So that's all I wanted to create was just a little easy method of learning more about how we're performing in practice so that they can help us make better informed decisions in tournament the next week.
I think that's probably one of the good reasons and good byproducts of why Coach Small hired you. I'm sure he's appreciating that and enjoying that.
For sure. And Coach Small has a lot of drills and games that he's done for a long time. And it's been really fun just observing what he does and how he trains the boys and seeing how I can integrate some of this technology into that as well to complement his practices and perhaps make him more efficient or at least gather out some really good, rich data to help our boys learn more about their games.
That's great. Well, along those same lines, you're trying to do something that's more excellent, if you will. I've seen you always place a high value on excellence. You do it when you're having a conversation. You do it when you're coaching a player. You do it. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like on campus back in Champaign. I'm sure that, and I don't consider you a perfectionist. That's not what, I don't think you're a perfectionist. I think you are a person who places a high value on excellence. Is that true? And when did you develop that?
Coach, I think that is true. And I think the game of golf has helped me develop that. And when you think about it, every time you sign your name on that scorecard, it should be the best score that you have. And I think that translates to a lot of things that we do in life. There's no scorecard, perhaps, for the things that we do on a daily basis. But if you assume that there is, am I signing my name next to the best piece of work that I'm submitting? And I think that's just the game of golf taught me that. I hope it teaches our players that too, because there's nothing more important than taking pride in your work, I believe.
I learned that lesson at age 11 the hard way. My dad, he told me basically I had done a poor job in cleaning up the back room, the bag room where the members' clubs were being stored. And he brought me in off the practice green and he said, "Hey, Mike, you're going to do this job again. And this time, remember, once you do this job, your name is all over it."
Correct.
And I never thought, I mean, ever since then, every time I do a good job and I know I've done a good job, I think of that moment my dad basically told me, just remember, you're signing your name to that job. And I think more kids in today's generation would benefit greatly. Doesn't mean you have to obsess about it. Just give it your best. That's all.
Exactly. Just like rounds of golf, coach. When things aren't going well, and you just have to fight through, figure out a way, adapt, adjust, and ensure that whatever score you post up there for the team at the end of the day is the best you got.
Yeah, and I think t your teammates gain some confidence and belief knowing that you've done that, and you gain trust with them. So we're going to do at the end of this, we're going to do a speed round that I do occasionally on this, but I haven't prepared you for that one. But before we do that, I'm going to ask one more question, and we'll go straight into the speed round. Do you think you're up for the speed round today?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, well, we'll see. All right, so you're in coaching. You've been in coaching quite a while now, and I you mentioned to me earlier in the podcast how you got in, but tell me this, what's been the best unexpected surprise from your coaching experience? Like what's been a bonus from this you weren't expecting going in?
That's a great question, coach. Um, I'm not sure if this was a bonus, but I think I look back now and you don't realize what goes on behind the scenes as a coach until you're in that role. And so I look back at my time as a player, and I'm just so thankful and grateful for my coaches and all the work and the effort they poured out into me and my teammates because, man, we do a lot behind the scenes that not many people know about. And so that's maybe an unexpected surprise. Yes, there's more roles and responsibilities behind the scenes, but also it's created more of a gratitude towards the coaches that I've had in the past.
Yeah, and I've heard other young coaches say the same thing. It's like, wow, if I would have known my coaches were doing this when I was playing for them, I think I would have treated them a lot better, right? I've respected it or been more grateful. But anyway,
For
okay, very,
sure.
very well said. Okay, our speed round. This will end it for today. I'm going to give you as much time as you need to answer each question, but try to do it as quickly as you think you possibly can. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Here we go. Your go-to fast food restaurant after a tournament round.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, that's very normal. Remember the Titans or the Shawshank Redemption?
Remember the Titans.
Oh, nice. That's a great coaches movie. We coaches love that.
Hmm.
Keith Urban or George Strait?
Keith Urban.
Yeah, I knew an Aussie would say that. I
I had
knew it.
to. I had to.
Okay. If you could win one tournament, what would it be?
The Masters.
Okay, very good. If you hadn't been a golfer, what sport would you have played?
Soccer.
Soccer. Okay, that's pretty normal. Very good. Favorite current PGA Tour pro? Could be on live too if you got one on live.
I'm a big John Rahm guy.
Hmm, what a player. Favorite course you have played?
Ooh, Whispering Pines is up there, coach. Played the Big 12 championship there a few years ago, and that's got to be up there.
What a beautiful place, Whispering Pines. You know, it had a flood this past spring that did a lot of damage, so I'm hoping they can get all that back together.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Most famous person you've ever had dinner with?
Wow, now that's a tough question. I might have to skip and see if I can come back on that one.
Okay, we'll come back on that one. Favorite type of book to read: fiction, biography, or coaching and leadership?
Coaching and leadership for sure.
All right, I love to do that. I love biography, but I do not love fiction. I don't understand fiction; it's not real. All right. Most memorable shot of your career?
It was actually at Whispering Pines, last hole with the Big 12 championship. I'd snap hooked my drive straight left behind the trees, about 171 to a back left pin. And I remember standing behind the ball, eyeing this shot out. And in the distance, I see Coach Tank peer through behind the green, thinking, he's probably thinking, is Ruben thinking about snap hooking this iron shot over the lake and onto the green? And that's exactly what I did. I made a 40-foot putt, and I think I finished in the top 10 that week.
Well, coach, he would have given you the wrong coaching. He would have had you chip out.
He would have. He would have.
Okay. All right. Before we go to our dream foursome, I'm going back to that most famous person you had dinner with.
I'm going to say Mike McGraw at Outback Steakhouse. How about that?
Absolutely brilliant answer. That's as good as it gets right there. All right. Dream foursome, you and three others if you can limit it. If not, a fivesome if you have to.
I think I'll go my dad,
Dad,
Tiger Woods, and we'll throw
Tiger,
Jason Day in there too.
and Jason Day. Wow. You just picked. Is your dad a good enough player to be in that group?
Not right now, he's not. He's losing some distance off the tee, so I hope he can still chip and putt.
Just give him the right tee boxes and he'll be fine. Well, listen, Ruben, this has been a pleasure for me. I really do respect you as a coach, and I think you're one of the good guys in our profession, one of the up and coming young players. I don't think you'll be an assistant coach for a long time, although I'm sure Mike Small would love to treat you well enough to keep you around. But I think you're going to make an outstanding head coach one day. You're already a great assistant coach. So thank you so much for spending an hour with me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me on the podcast, Coach.
Absolutely. Well, we will see you at some point this spring. I don't know where it would be, hopefully at a regionals or nationals. And if I don't see you then, have a great off season and good preparation for next spring.
Sounds good. You too, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you.